Welcome back to the Federalist Radio Hour. I'm Chris Bedford here with Daniel Turner, who is the executive director of Power of the Future, which is a company that tries to save jobs and allow people to understand what's going on with energy. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. We are here to talk about Epicurious, a food website filled with recipes that both of us really loved. A lot of people really loved it. It's been a good long run. But yesterday this week they did something that is just so deeply unserious and so deeply stupid that it had to unfollow them and they had to stop using them. And I tore up a recipe the day that they did this. I was going to cook that night. So Turner, you just got the tweet pulled up. Let's hear tell me what everyone said here.
Yeah, so this is Epicurious' tweet that says, "Today we announced that Epicurious is cutting out beef."
Ah!
Exactly.
Oh, no.
It won't appear in new Epicurious recipes, articles, newsletters, or on social. This isn't a vendetta against cows or people who eat them. It's a shift about sustainability. I hate that word. Not anti-beef, but pro-planet.
Oh.
That's beautiful.
Okay, so
here's the little image of the earth on a plate.
This just struck me immediately as such a deeply stupid, deeply unserious thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, there is not a single chef in this world outside of, I would say, like the Hindu religion who is serious about it, who would just ban the knowledge of it, ban recipes of it. Even those chefs, I mean, there's a Michelin star chef in France that used to always deal with ducks and classic French cooking. And then he came back, he said, you know what, I'm tired of being elbow deep in blood all day. I want to deal with vegetables, and ended up winning Michelin stars. Like, even he would never say something ever. And he's a very serious chef. So even the vegetarian chefs don't do this. You know people who live near your farm who take it very seriously, both their duty to the planet, far more than I do. I don't think cows are a danger. And they take sustainable farming and everything else very seriously. And their response is either to personally source their beef, or if they have the means or a big enough operation, like some of the great steakhouses and some of the great breweries even, to have their own herd and to raise them themselves. That's what intelligent people do. Are they just broken?
They are. I mean, right off the bat, and being on previous episodes of the Federalist Radio Show and your podcasts, we talk about the environmental movement a lot. And a huge position they take is this binary. It's either or, right? You either love fossil fuels or you hate the planet. You either, or you love the planet. You either want climate change or you want what we currently have, et cetera. So it's always one or the other.
I choose the flood.
And this idea that it's either we have cows or we have a planet is stupid, right? It is never a binary choice. Of course, we can find more sustainable ways of farming. Of course, some people are lucky that they can. Like you said, I'm able to source a lot of my meat between friends of ours who have different animals. Like, I know the animals I eat, and it's kind of cool. I knew those pigs. I knew those cows, right? And
I'm going to be upset when you kill the chicken you named after me.
I do have a chicken named Bedford, by the way.
Because he's the biggest jerk.
Yeah. Yeah. It was born and it was mean and it was aggressively. We're like, we're going to call that one Bedford, which is a sign of love.
Yes.
And I think also, for those who don't know us, not everyone knows our relationship. It is food that brought us together. Long time ago, we met through something at work and we started talking about food, and we were going to break down ducks.
That was our first thing to do. Let's do ducks.
First time we hung out together. And so our friendship has blossomed since then, but food is what unites, is what started our friendship. So to see this to see this attack on food, it's hurtful, but it's attack on, it is, as far as I'm concerned, the most misanthropic position. And that is the environmental left, and that is the sustainability movement. That's the environmental movement. They are truly anti-people.
They're joyless.
They are joyless. They don't like humanity. They don't like progress. And when you look at something like this saying we can't have a healthy planet unless we get rid of beef, that is just purely unscientific and stupid, but they've fallen for it.
And Condé Nast I think owns this company. I mean, that's owned by a parent company. You got to wonder how far up the chain is this rot going. And I think it's important to differentiate here what they did from what some other people might choose to do. Like, there are definitely chefs out there who are good, who just say, I prefer to work with this or this or this or that. maybe chefs who don't care for a cheeseburger, even though I think most people in America do. But this is just an outright ban based on how you feel. And one of the things that made me really laugh about it is it's like just like with Dr. Seuss, just like with just like with COVID vaccine passports, one after the other. When the right says the left's about to do something, everyone's like, "You idiot! No one's talking about that. Fact check, false. That's never going to happen." 3 days later, like the children's books are being banned, and the same thing is happening with the cows. Like days after, this has been a running joke all week in left wing media, corporate media that no one's coming after your cows, stupid wingnut. Granted, this is not someone coming after the cows.
It's the start,
but it's a cultural decision. It's a cultural move that these people are doing, and it's like, are you guys at this point? I got to wonder: are you guys just driving through New Mexico and Montana and Kentucky and West Virginia, looking for industry to destroy?
I think what concerns me about this, as you said, this is a private company, and private companies can do what they want. But I do think it is.
But they suck.
I do think it is a movement without a doubt, and it is a sign of a direction we're headed in. But what really bothers me about it is the food industry is very easy to regulate by government. Government already regulates the hell out of it, right? And you have people in powerful offices. Kamala Harris, when she was running for president, said very honestly when she was asked in the presidential debate, should we, remember the one-on-one forum, should we talk about regulatory food regulation and restricting certain food for climate change? And a typical Kamala answer was, well, I think we should have a conversation about it. Yeah. And then she joked, like, are you coming after the cheeseburgers? No, cheese. And that was her response.
And she starts stuttering, and it's really a ghastly thing.
She's open to it. And there is on the radical left, and I think
Cory Booker was the only one who wasn't, right?
Well, he's already a vegan.
Yeah, he's like, I'm a vegan.
So he's too tired to worry about it. He doesn't have the energy. But there is a big movement to control what we eat. I mean, look, this week, President Biden's administration, now it's not food, it's a pastime, but they announced they want to ban menthol cigarettes. Who the hell are you to tell us what we can and cannot consume? But I think if you
would you please stop attacking people of color?
I think if you take the food industry as a whole, it is so easy for government to come in and say, I don't think we should be able to produce that anymore, because they do that with other industries. They did it with alcohol.
They did it with, and they did it for years and years and years, and a lot of states still do, with foie gras, which was a victim of an Unreal campaign by BS vegans and all these people to try and make you think that, and like that. But a lot of people who are really smart, like informed generally, still think that foie gras is a cruel thing. That's a liver, whether it's duck or geese, and that liver is intentionally fattened up to the point that it's a lot more tasty, and it's an unhealthy liver. But I mean, at the end of the day, the animal gets slaughtered. But the thing about foie gras and the way that they got it made legal again in Massachusetts, I think even in California, I might have been New York, was by bringing lawmakers to these farms and saying, like, if I'm feeding somebody such a delicate thing that is so prone to the nerves of an animal and to their stress levels and their happiness, a stressed out duck doesn't make the best liver in the world. Like, period. It's an unhappy animal, and there are acids, and you can taste it. And then the lawmaker said, oh yeah, this makes sense. And they started to pull back on that. They unbanned absinthe finally in the United States, which was a victim of a massive smear campaign by the French wine industry. Because they wanted people to drink wine. Also, people are probably getting lead poisoning from absinthe because of bad distilleries, not from the absinthe. We have all these myths to enter, and they can be actually really dangerous. They can shut down access to whole realms of food for people in America. We still can't get the amazing sheep from Scotland, or even some of the cheeses, because of mad cow disease.
Nope. You can't get certain food imported from Italy because it doesn't meet FDA standards.
Butter from France, it's not pasteurized correctly. Like,
I may have gotten some of that secretly somehow.
I smuggled some back from Germany. I'm not going to France. I'm not that weird, guys.
Yeah. It's just it is concerning about. Look at the issue now. It wasn't necessarily about beef, but it was about cattle rights. Who were those families up in was it Wyoming or Colorado, and they had that shootout during the Obama administration?
Was it the Budd family?
Forget their name, and I remember the instance, but that was about cattle rights, right? That is how government control of certain industries, how powerful it is, right? Government can or cannot allow you to have cattle grazing rights. Government can or cannot allow you to bring these goods to markets. Government can and cannot allow certain alcohols, tobacco. The Bundy. Yeah.
Stand with Clive Bundy.
Yes, Clive Bundy. That's right.
He wanted to do a controlled burn.
Yeah.
So his property would not be destroyed.
Yeah.
And their response was to, basically Waco him.
And I think the other thing that really bothers me about this from just the food perspective is when you look at like 10,000 years of man on this earth, the most of our lives we've been trying to stay alive, meaning not get killed by Vikings or by some disease, right? Or by like a splinter. We've been trying to stay warm because we've been cold, and we've been trying to find food, right? The whole evolution of man is because of those three variables have been taken care of. We are at a point now of such amazing luxury, and I mean that in the classical sense, right? Like of the sense that we don't have to worry about necessarily starvation. We don't, and of course there's hunger in the world. You all know what I mean. But we're able to evolve as a country.
America's poorest people, a lot of them have, not the children, the adults have an obesity problem.
We are able to evolve as a country, as a society, because of, I will always say fossil fuels, and I will also say our food supply, right? So when I feel like attacks like this, like we got to get rid of beef, just like we got to get rid of fracking, we have to get rid of natural gas and oil. They are attacks on civilization. They're attacks on what makes us us. And the countries in the world that haven't evolved, or that are least to evolve right now, I shouldn't say evolve, the countries that are least advanced are the ones that don't have reliable food sources and they don't have fossil fuels. Right, they're starving and they're dark. They have no power. They have no factories. And they can't bring food to market. How lucky are we that we have this? And if you want to find an alternative, we're going to do soy instead. Don't think that soybeans are good for the earth, right? Don't think that the biggest problem of deforestation...
Yeah, almond milk and stuff.
Yeah, the biggest problem of deforestation is because they're chopping down trees, especially in Latin America, South America, and in the Amazon, to put down soybean crops. And soybean crops are not nearly as good for the environment as those trees they're cutting down, right? We're going to go soy. Almond milk, which you mentioned. Almond milk, 1 gallon of almond milk.
Juice, please. It is not milk.
Almond juice, almond liquid. I read an article that said 1 gallon of it requires over like 1,100 liters of water.
You know how hard it is to milk an almond, man?
It's very, so places like California, where they give huge tax incentives to chop down trees and put almond farms, the government incentives are what's destroying the planet. Right, it's not cows. It's just, I don't know. It's this bizarre attack on.
I won't believe. I believe every single conspiracy, basically in the world, ever since one, an island of millionaire pederasts that involve U.S. presidents and British royalty was busted, and two, after they banned straws.
Yeah,
you banned plastic straws because a child set up a website that made up how many straws were in the ocean, and you found it was a turtle. Which I love turtles. I love diving. I love going and see that. I love the ocean. You saw a turtle with a straw in it, so now I have to drink out of paper. Yeah. Like this stuff starts to come and it starts to feed. And what I hope to have happen in response to this is just the broad people in food saying this is fundamentally unserious. Yeah. But food has become a real place for propaganda. I mean, I guess it always has been, but. We were talking earlier about what was that dish that Kwame, the chef, called this is the dish that civilization was built on.
In the last episode of Top Chef I watched, it was some stew from
an African stew that
East
no one's
Africa
ever heard of.
And I'm sure
outside of East Africa.
And maybe it's wonderful. I haven't had it. I don't even remember what it's called. It may be wonderful. But that's just an unserious comment to say, like, this is the food that inspired the world, or this is the food that, I mean, no offense to those countries. I'm sure their cuisine is lovely, but it's not the food that inspired the world. And the fact that we are not talking about it means it didn't inspire the world, not because we're Eurocentric, but because we are the product of our ancestors, and our ancestors weren't inspired by this.
No.
Right? Just like, there's got to be some great philosopher, I'm sure, in Bangladesh. But that's not who inspired all these very lofty books around us. They were inspired by Socrates and Aristotle and Descartes.
And one of those things that's essential for civilization to advance is domesticated animals that can be domesticated. Now, people give, people make jokes sometimes like, why before the European settlers came here, why were there no fences and why were there no wheels basically amongst the North American Indians? It's like, what'd you have to pull a wheel? What you try with trees to fence in a bison herd? That ain't gonna happen.
Yeah,
and they can't do it now. And it was like, yeah, why don't you attach your wagon to that bison? Or what am I going to do? Attach it to the alligator?
Yeah.
Attach it to the alligator. Okay. Like they don't have. We had in Europe. We had the cattle. We had the grains. We had the farming. Of course, the Indians had their own farming, which is some interesting stuff that saved a lot of lives in America. But these are the things that built civilization and made us so that we were sustainable. Made like you drove west with cattle if you could to not only to pull but also if you needed to eat. I mean, this is part of our experience, and I just hope that it gets smacked down. I mean, the other day when it came out, I had printed out this recipe from Epicurious for a veal chop I was cooking that night. And
it was a good-looking veal chop. I saw the raw ingredients. I didn't see the final product, but the raw ingredient was a beautiful-looking veal chop.
It was a beautiful. I don't know, Eastern Market Butcher, Glasgow and Sons, wonderful place. It's a couple generations in there, but I ended up printing out. I mean, I went to the New York Times, which I know.
Great.
It's
food
worth
section.
Subscribing for the recipes.
Yeah.
They're unreal how good they are because they have guests. It's not someone just like trying to come up with something new. Like,
there's an overused expression of "we stand on the shoulder of giants," right? We hear that expression a lot, but I do think in this case it's generally applicable and it's appropriate. We as society right now, 2021 America, stand on the shoulder of giants, of those who came before us and gave us so much. And I hate this constant movement of attacking, like I said, fossil fuels, which will always be my first love, but attacks on food, attacks on Dr. Seuss, attacks on literature. Shakespeare, right? Who is now banned from, and we're teaching Ibrahim X. Kendi instead. But
his actual real name is Henry Rogers.
But we can't teach. I know a better Henry Rogers. We can't teach the classics, and so it's just this bizarre notion of all of these things in combination through the generations. The literal definition of patrimony that we have inherited, we now attack with this myopic and haughty perspective that, well, we don't need these things. We don't need oil and gas. We don't need plastic or rubber or any of the materials that come from fossil fuels. We don't need these foods. We can survive without them. And you want to say to these people, you couldn't survive a day without all the things that were given to you by brilliant people who came before you.
I'm going to take my cardboard and my plastic sign, and I'm going to take my Sharpie. I'm going to write "Save the Earth," and me and my bottle of Fiji water, shipped all the way from Fiji. Are going to march on down to the climate march. And we're going to show you how serious we are. And then we're going to have that
miles,
little European creepy child being like, how dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you?
And you know what I think we need to do? And I don't know if we're allowed to call people out on the Federalist Radio Show. The authors of Epicurious, can they prove to us in their personal lives that they are foregoing meat as well? Or is this just virtual signaling to keep people off their back?
Everything is virtual signaling.
In your private life, because when Joe Biden says like one hamburger a month and 4 pounds of meat maximum per year, or that statistic that came out of the White House, I want to see the White House menus. I want proof that when he's having these dinners, because every day he has a lunch in it, former presidents used to have lunches and dinners. Who knows what's going on with this guy?
He doesn't have lunch and dinner. No one wants to eat thin gruel.
I want to see what they're serving, right? I want to see them
food
in their personal lives, because it's the same with the environmental left. They preach this. We have to start. Remember, I mentioned this to you a while ago, and it cracked me up when Anderson Cooper interviewed Bill Gates, and they talked about the sacrifices mankind has to make. And we said, wow, a Vanderbilt heir and the world's richest man talking about the sacrifices mankind have to make. Are they in their personal life going to make any of the sacrifices? So we know the environmental left doesn't forego any of the luxuries. John Kerry is maskless on his private plane right now as we speak.
I bet John Kerry does not eat steak,
but
he probably eats soy and almonds.
He thinks it's too rich.
It upsets his stomach.
Exactly. So I just want to see if the Epicurious staff in their personal life will make that commitment, or are they just going to be as fraudulent as everyone else in the virtue signaling left?
I mean, the virtue signaling is becoming, it's just so much. I mean, it's really annoying to have the "I'm a better person than you" signs that in the front yard. By the way, like when it says "all people are welcome here," what it really means is that you're not welcome here. Or, I absolutely love this business in DC. It's a brewery. It's been closed during COVID because they don't have enough space to be open. They're making their beer, but it's enough space to like make money under the rules right now. But everywhere you go in there's all these wonderful illustrations of like, don't shame people who are breastfeeding, and don't shame women who are wearing a hijab. And I'm thinking, I got news to you. I have not seen that many breastfeeding women or observant Muslim women
in a brewery.
In your brewery. I come here twice a week or so. That's fine. I kind of think that sign is aimed more at me. Yeah. Who, by the way, I'm not going around causing trouble with with observant religious people or people who are breastfeeding at all. But I kind of feel like, I'm not exactly sure who your audience here. Nice sign, but it's gotten a lot worse in that sense. Now it's like, if you don't inject your daughter with a vaccine that is 10 years effects we don't know on what it's going to be. If you don't do that when she's 10 years old and then put a picture online, then you're not virtuous enough about it. And it's like, okay, this is going a little far now. I'll put a sign in my yard. How about that? We'll stop at the sign.
Little Mr. Stelter and is like, not enough Fox people are posting selfies getting their vaccine.
I love it. I love Tucker Carlson's effect on the mentally weak and the mentally ill at CNN and at MSNBC, or my beloved friend Eric Wemple over at the WashingtonPost.com blog, because he doesn't write for the paper, calling all of these different protective services across the entire country to find out if Tucker Carlson's viewers were reporting people for not having masks on their children or having masks on their children. Of course, the answer was no. I mean, he spent all day doing this and then posted his loss because he breaks people. Yeah. And I like that. People are too easy to break, though. The Epicurious thing just shows it.
Yeah, and it's just disappointing. It's disappointing because, again, you have to inject politics and everything, which is what the left does, right?
Put the politics in your arm and show us the Band-Aid.
Just be a cooking site, right? Like your show your website is dedicated to recipes and to cooking, and it was one of my favorites. I was disappointed.
There's Caesar salad dressing, it's unreal.
I was disappointed to hit the unsubscribe button, but I'm not gonna be privy or be party to something that just buys into this leftist nonsense.
I love hitting unsubscribe,
and it just makes you sad, right? It makes you sad because it's just one more thing along with my beloved New York Yankees and along with the NFL and Coca-Cola, and my list is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
The things that make me unhappy, that's just called getting older.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I can imagine you walking away from the Epicurious recipes, and it just explodes and a single tear comes down your face.
Exactly. Luckily, though, I think when it comes to cooking now, I'm at the stage that I don't really need recipes as much anymore.
No, they're still fun to explore, but fortunately, I mean, places like Epicurious were great because we have to speak about them in the past tense because they're dead to us.
Yeah.
Because they consistently put out great products. But there's so many people doing it right now. There's so many weird things. I logged on to YouTube the other day, and I guess this guy's famous. He's Canadian. He's like a really big, fat, foul-mouthed, tattooed Canadian chef with red hair. Very ugly fellow. Kind of hysterical. Beautiful wife. And he cooked a steak basically entirely in butter and canola oil. And I thought, I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. And this is just watching videos. You can always get new stuff.
I asked you about that once, and you did it, right? When you took the whole steak and you put it in the melted butter and let it solidify, right? There's a famous chef in Europe who does that, and it comes out, and it is like a big block of butter with a steak in it, and that's how he almost he cures it almost in butter. And
it's like a wet cure.
Yeah, which is kind of
a wet age. It's really messy, and I don't recommend it.
I'm sure it's expensive. Also, it's a lot of butter.
Yeah, you use
right,
butter,
and that's a lot. That's a lot of butter. So I don't. Unfortunately, they can't necessarily watch, but we do have some great steaks to cook while we talk about this later on.
Yeah, we'll be. So this evening we're going to be filming back at my house with some friends. A bunch of just amazing steak and sauce recipes. Now, granted, I might screw that up, so we'll see. But if I do, pretend on camera. If I don't, so tune in. That video will be coming out next week at thefederalist.com. But thank you for joining me, Daniel Turner, with Power of the Future to talk about this sad day and how we're going to troll them. And this is a good time to own the libs. And until next time, be lovers of freedom and anxious for the fray.